Okay, a very, very pleasant evening to everyone, especially our viewers. Again, I'm coming to you this evening. My name is Dr. Bola Idowu of Seeds Omega Consulting, the CEO. So I welcome you to our special blog, vlog. Safe, Healthy, Wealthy, where we talk about issues on safety, healthy lifestyles, and wealth building. In today's episode, we will be discussing the motivational book that I wrote, Leave the Nest to Soar. This book used the analogy of an eagle, a mother eagle, and how she ensures that she nurtures her eaglets, but it gets to the point when she's ready to push them out. When she feels that she's ready, the eaglets are ready to start to learn how to fly. So as a result, we realize that the same concept can be attributed to us also. So as we develop in life, we start to realize that we find ourselves in different nests. I'm not going to give too much away. I'm going to be asking my panel for tonight. And therefore, I have the pleasure to be joined by two lovely guests who have gotten to read the book and will share their perspectives as well as their stories of overcoming fears, barriers, and everything else society throws at us. So my guests are Professor Folabo Ajayi-Soyinka, retired Professor Emerita from University of Kansas, Department of Women, Gender Studies, and Theater in Lawrence, Kansas. I also have the pleasure to introduce my second guest, Toun Olumide, an attorney and marketing consultant that has her own business, Toho Solutions. Ladies, welcome to the first Safe, Healthy, Wealthy vlog. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a pleasure and an honor for me to be here with you.
Thank you so very much. And today we are going to go straight into it. We're looking at the feedback of people who have read this book, Leave the Nest to Soar. And I'm sure if you've been following my previous videos, it will be easy for you tonight to understand what we're about to start talking about, discussing. So my first question goes to Professor Ajayi-Soyinka. Can you tell us how you came across the book and what attracted you to reading it?
Yeah. Surely, the author, Dr. Bola, a very good self, and I have known each other for a long time, for many years, when we were both graduate students at the University of Ibadan. Various issues over the years, whether they are personal, social, and even professional matters, even though we are in different areas. We support and lift each other up. So she told me about the book she was writing, and when she finished, she sent me a copy for my opinion. At first, I wondered at the title, Leave the Nest to Soar? Something kind of conflicted with my literal mind. It sounded dissonant. The nest is where you learn how to fly and soar, so why do you want to leave it? But I was also curious to find out what she has to say. Apparently, I knew nothing about the tough love training techniques of that great bird, the eagle. I was in for a big surprise. Inspiring and motivational, and the deep truth as I dug into the book. I could not put it down. I was drawn in marveling at how Dr. Bola systematically, steadily, and neatly unpacked the message, how she linked leaving the nest to the quest of soaring to one's best. The parent eagle lovingly builds the nest, twigs for foundation, and then layers of soft feathers where the eggs will be laid and the eaglets hatched. We feed them regularly so they can grow and gain strength. However, when at the appropriate growth stage, parent eagle tears up the nest and the baby eagles are forced to leave the nest and then fly high. What a sobering imagery. What a powerful and appropriate metaphor. I really, really love and appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Professor Ajayi-Soyinka. So how about you, Toun?
Okay, so I got the pleasure of learning about the book through the author herself, Dr. Bola Idowu. We have known each other for several years but had lost touch. And just recently, in probably the last 4-5 months, we reconnected on LinkedIn. And, in the course of talking about what we're both doing in the last couple of years since we had last spoken, she told me about this book, and I too was intrigued by the title, and I thought, oh wow, that's an interesting title. And I asked, how I could buy a copy or get a copy, and she said, oh, she has one and she can send it to me. So she sent it to me, and I started reading it. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about life is that sometimes you're in a season in life where you really actually need to hear something. And even though it might be a message you've heard before, it's when you're actually in a frame of mind where you're going through something that it really applies. So, when I started reading the book, I was already in a season of transition in my life, changing. I'd moved from one country to the next, was starting my life over again. And, it really felt like a nest that I was moving out of into something else. So as I started reading, I just couldn't stop. I had to keep reading it till I got to the end, because every time I'm like, oh, this applies to me. This is my life. Oh my goodness, this is what I need to hear. So I was really, really excited reading the whole book. I think I read it in like 2 days max, and that's just only because I had to sleep at night. And just, I've been super excited to share what I learned about the book, and just continue to give others that chance to realize that there are lots of really good nuggets of wisdom written in the book, and it applies to so many people, because we're constantly in spaces and times in our lives that we need to hear this message. So I'm a gung-ho fan and supporter.
Well, thank you very much, ladies. That is really encouraging. That that was how you felt when you started to read it. And thank you so much for those comments. I'm gonna read a passage just to remind us about exactly what did I write in it. What does the nest mean? We can look at it in terms of where are you? Which point, like Toun said, are you in? And are your children moving from home to another, to the dormitory? Or, are you relocating? Are you moving from one state to the other? So I'm going to read, and it reads, the nest could mean or represent different things to different people. It could be a physical refuge, an emotional cave, a mental hideaway, a relationship in which you are in, a job in which you are in. So I would like to ask, if it is a place of shelter, if it is a place of growth, if it is a place that, you can be in it, but you can decide to remain in it or decide to step out of it. So I'll go to Toun first. For you, what did that nest represent?
So the nest represented for me a physical place as well as an emotional and a mental state. Physical for me being location. So I had, and I guess I'll use this chance to tell my story so that it makes sense and it applies. So I moved from the US to Nigeria in hopes of trying out a new adventure, I'd call it. And I lived in Nigeria for 6 years, and I had built a career, had friends, church, family, and I was comfortable, fairly comfortable, but there was a need for me to change locations. So physical nest was necessary. Second, I say emotional and mental because it was a mind frame that I also think I needed to get out of. I was restless, but I was not sure that I was confident enough to make the moves that I needed to make. I was worried about the unknown. What if it doesn't work? Oh my goodness, coming back to the US, I have to start all over again. I have to get new friends, start a new career, start a new job, all from scratch. And, just that fear is what I'll just call it, of starting over and feeling like, oh, I failed. My peers are going in other directions. They've probably surpassed me, and I go back and start at ground one. So, these were just things I was holding on to, wanting to stay in there, wanting to stay physically in Nigeria, even though I knew that I needed to do something else. And then just wanting to mentally just keep myself in that position of, just being comfortable, not trying anything new. Mm-hmm. So those are certainly the nests that I found have come up.
Thank you very much, Toun. And I'm really glad that you were able to share your story, because it matters, so that people will be able to resonate with really what we're talking about. So Professor Ajayi-Soyinka, how about you? What resonated with you? Which of the next or the ones that I didn't mention actually resonate with you?
Yeah. Well, I think that given my age, I've gone through so many. But there's one that I'd like to mention. And I think that it sort of sounds like Ms. Toun's too. It's physical and it's emotional. But then I think I will give it my own name, which is like emotional travel.
Okay.
And that emotional travel was my comfort zone. Of course, I did not realize it at the time it was happening. I thought that the traveling aspect was part of my professional development, that I was growing professionally. My travels were supposed to aid my research work. And yes, I would say that the first travel grant that I made in this area was indeed necessary for my profession as a growth. But then after the first couple of travels, I started using the traveling as an emotional anchor, as not to face reality.
Hmm.
At that time, emotionally, I was going through a particularly traumatic period in my life.
Wow.
And traveling, which actually I love, because I love meeting people. I love going to new places and making friends and finding out about things. And what better way than to rope all this travel as critical to my professional growth? Well, professional growth means you do the research, then you write it up,
Mm-hmm.
publish. Only I was not doing that. I was traveling, I was doing research, but I was not writing up, I was not publishing.
Wow.
And I kept traveling. I would be gone for 6, 9 months, a year. And these were mostly international travels. Apparently, the trauma, the pain attached itself to my suitcases.
Wow.
I was starting new projects, but I was not finishing them. And I would even self-sponsor when the grants were no longer forthcoming. So that was,
The nest that, you actually did find yourself in.
yeah.
And yes, as the two of you were actually sharing, there's something that stood out in the sense that at times it may be hard for us to realize that we are in a nest. Professor Ajayi mentioned something. He said, really, it becomes your comfort zone, a place where you are comfortable, a place where you feel that it's safe. So it can be really like a place of refuge, like she shared with us. But at the same time, we want to realize that at what point do I need to come out of that nest? I want to also thank some of our viewers and those who have been contacting us through the hashtag that we have running, hashtag leave the nest to soar. And that hashtag, we are finding out that really there are different nests that we have to go through in life. But what is important is that when it's time to leave a nest, for us to be able to know the process, what to do, and all of that. So I'm going to read another section of the book. And it says, in order to fulfill purpose and come out of the nest, at times it could be God's call or another assignment in another area for you to step out of the nest. It is very dangerous not to do the will of God, because your disobedience to his instructions can cause other people to perish or miss the portion of life. So with this that I have just quoted for us, please tell our viewers, in terms of purpose and the fact whether it is time for us to leave the nest, purpose, or the goals in life, so that someone listening to us right now can be thinking, you know what, I've actually been in this spot, and yet there are better things outside. So can you just share with us, how it came to you that having a purpose and realizing that is really like an initial step to assessing your environment and saying it's time for me to move on? Yes, Professor Ajayi, please. Ajayi-Soyinka, sorry.
The realization of the rut that I was in had 2 stages.
Okay.
The First one, okay, let me say that first I was able to realize it because for two reasons. I think God and possibly my faith.
Mm.
Because I've always believed that God has always looked out for me and he was guiding me.
Okay.
I know that I did not create myself and that my creator has not abandoned me.
Mm-hmm.
So he nudged me out of my complacency.
Awesome. Awesome.
And this now dovetails into the second reason that I want to mention, and that's my family. I told you that I was traveling. I was being away for 6 months, a year internationally. So so there's no way. And at that time, talking on telephone is not as easy as it is now. So my children were growing, and I was missing family landmarks. I was relating to my grandchildren via the internet, which was just developing, and Skype. I realized that the soft feathers of the nest were wearing thin. And if I was not careful, the twigs would fall under me, pulling me down with them, and possibly my family.
Wow.
So I had a serious talk with myself. Yes, I talk to myself a lot. I abandoned my comfort zone of travel and confronted the emotional trauma from which I was running.
Wow. Wow.
So I returned home, faced my job. I reviewed my abandoned projects, those half-started, half-completed projects, and focused on the more viable ones. And I became meaningfully productive, got closer to my children, and realized also that the trauma that I was running from also was affecting them. And so together as a family, we helped each other, let me put it that way.
Okay.
And the next stage was that I also realized that perhaps I needed to start planning for my retirement. Wow. So I intensified my savings, got together with my financial planner, and started working towards a safe and secure retirement.
Wow, that is deep, Prof. That is extremely deep. But thank you for sharing the fact that something got you to sit back and assess the situation and decide to take action. So, Toun, how about you?
So when you ask that question, how one determines purpose and what needs to happen to achieve that purpose, it reminded me of a section in your book actually that I read that was so true. And I'm just going to try to read it quickly.
Okay.
There, it's on page 35, if you want to follow along. The bottom page 35, it says, there's a purpose for each person on earth. Everyone is created to fulfill, because God is a God of purpose. We come out of the nest so we can fulfill God's purpose for our lives. He never creates anything just for the fun of it. He creates with a clear-cut mandate of purpose. One of the ways to discover that purpose and fulfill it is to get out of your nest, the comfort zone. You cannot fully know your purpose for each level without hearing his voice. God still speaks, but you may not hear because of the disorder and chattering environment that is the order of the day in the nest. Life is generally noisy until you move out of the crowd and spend quality time alone with God. It is then you hear his voice and know his will for your life. And, that is completely my story. I was busy, 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 busy. I don't even think I had a single quiet moment from high school till date. I was always in every club, always, I love doing things, which is not a bad thing, but I feel like I was always busy, and I was very activity oriented, but not necessarily clear on purpose. And those are two different things. You can just be busy, but not really be moving in a particular direction. And really, I would say that the last year and a half, where I mentioned those transitions that I needed to make, and also even just this season of the pandemic, even bringing it that close to home, that stopped all those activities. No more hanging out with friends, going out, doing this, running around saying, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. We just had to stay home and just be quiet and just be quiet. And, the amount of revelation that I've gotten in just this couple of months of spending more quiet time, praying, reading, has been amazing. Because, it's truly been the case that the Holy Spirit has just shared so much with me that is taking me into all the other new things that I can do, that I am doing, going into setting up my own firm, where ideas that were brewing, but I didn't give it that quiet time to sit down and put it down and get it together, because I was just always busy. So I certainly take to heart what you wrote in the book, that God really has a plan for all of us, and it's possible to miss that if we're so busy, so allowing our lives to be filled with activities, noise, which is not a bad thing, being with friends and all the time, but there's actually a time to retreat, to isolate, and to get into that planning stage with God, for him to really tell you, okay, these are things that I want you to do with your life. And that's how I felt. I said, oh, I have all these skills and things that I enjoy doing, but what job is this going to be called? Because I can't find them in all these job searches I'm doing. And I felt like it was just in a quiet time where it was like, you'll set up your firm. And I was like, where did that come from? Just hearing that.
Powerful.
In a quiet place in it wasn't my friends were like, so we don't hear from you anymore. And I was just like, I really think I needed this time to just retreat and to find myself, because it wasn't sustainable to keep starting and stopping and not really being clear on direction. And what an energy it has given me, knowing now that I have purpose, that God has given me lots of skills and abilities as a lawyer, as a communicator, in design, in writing, in business, and they're not all skills that I need to do one thing with. I can be versatile, and having my consulting allows me to do what I feel like I've been made to do, which is help people. Help people share their own story, build their own business, do their own brand. And it's just been so amazing, that the minute I listened and heard that from God, it just started happening, where people will start reaching out to me, say, oh, Toun, can you help me with this? I'm like, is this a coincidence? How can all of a sudden people that I've probably known for many years now start asking me to do something for them, as a paid job? So I can't even emphasize it enough that, finding purpose is important, but it really feels like it can best happen when we truly stop. We are in a world where there's always activities, there's always things going on, but being able to be quiet and to just take some time to ourselves and to hear from God and to read good books like this, which I feel God speaks through, has been a blessing to me. So
Wow.
You know what, ladies, as I
learned from that.
yes, You agree with that, right?
And I learned from it too.
Okay, that's good. As I listen to the two of you, one thread that keeps came through. And first, I want to thank you, ladies, for really sharing your stories, because that is really what this series is going to be like, for people to come and share their stories so that others know that things that other people are going through, that it is okay to go through it. But at the same time, it is very necessary to know that things have happened. Okay, so also to make it relevant to the period that we're in now, with the pandemic, a lot of people have been laid off. These are people that feels that my 9 to 5 is great. I have all these benefits. I'm getting promoted every year. So I'm cool here. I love my supervisor. I love the mission and the vision of the organization. But at the end of it, with what has just happened, some people are finding it easy to actually say, to assess and say, maybe really this is an advantage for me, like Toun shared with us. This is an advantage. So therefore, opening themselves up to new opportunities, in this instance, new nests to move into. And what really also stood out from the story of the two of you is that in order at times to hear or to be able to assess, you need to find a way that you draw out yourself so that you can actually focus and say, God, why am I here? What do you want me to do? How do you want me to impact lives? And because I know that you have the master plan, and I'm just a piece of pie in the whole thing. So I really appreciate your sharing your stories along those lines. And for people who are at home, who are listening to us or will view this later, is just to be able to know when to have your quiet time so that you're able to hear the direction that the Lord is directing you. Now, some people might be listening and saying, I don't believe in God. But really, if you pull back and assess where you have been, things that have happened, how they happened, and what you did to be able to make a change, because as the title of the book said, you will leave a place that looks like refuge, that looks like, comfort, in order for you to be able to get to the next level that, the Lord is calling you into. So I have a section in the book, and I'm looking at it, that it says action items. So with action items, let me read one. Since we are talking about honestly dealing with ourselves, one of the action items that I have in the book, I said, honestly assess whether you tend to run away from problems, avoid or confront issues and those challenges so that you can get to a solution. I said, running away or avoiding issues do not develop you. Recognize it and start to strive towards handling issues in a way that makes you grow. So when you hear that, or when you read that, were you able to now really systematically think about, okay, what am I going to do? I think Toun mentioned a little bit about it, but can you expand on that for us?
Yes. So yes, once I realized that I needed to do something, and I felt I had heard that you have to do this move from, and I will, just so the story is a bit clear too, I may have missed it. In the course of the pandemic, I was actually I had been applying for jobs, and it crossed my mind to start my consulting firm, but I said, no, let me work some more, be employed, and, get a bit more experience before I go that route. And then I had interviewed, I got an offer. I didn't think it was what exactly I wanted. So I asked the firm if I could apply for a more senior role. And really, the week that we were supposed to schedule the interview was when the shutdowns happened. Wow. So, that put it up. So taking back to what you said, I mean, that's exactly my story, where I was, literally ready to be offered another employment. And so what I then had to do was, assess what I was going to do, and finding myself in the quiet time of the pandemic, I knew where to go, just doing a lot more reading, praying about it, and feeling that I was hearing that, a purpose that God had for me was to start my own consulting firm, strategic marketing and management firm. And so I think it was literally about the same time I had read a section, I think maybe the first 2 chapters. And where I want to come in terms of action items is to say that on May 9th, 2020, wow, when I read this section, I wrote it down. And I said I was going to share it today. So you have in here, and, I know everyone can't see, but I literally love the fact that the book has sections that you can write in so that you can, take notes and also start to even pen down your own ideas of what you want to do in terms of getting out of ENS. So here you have a section that says, complete and write down what comes to your mind as a declaration statement. And it says, I declare I can make it if I, and then fill in the blanks. And I wrote for myself, I declare I can make it if I keep my focus on Jesus. And even though you had blank space, I was like, oh, what am I supposed to do with all this blank space you wrote? So I was like, okay, let me start thinking and start writing. So then I wrote, I declare I can make it, or rather, I declare I can set up, build, and run my own marketing and management consulting firm.
Wow.
And, years ago when I was very young, someone said, once you write something down, the chances of it happening are closer to 99%. And I believed that all as for most of my career, schooling, and the likes. So once I wrote it down, it was just something where I knew I was going to do it. I just knew I was going to do it. And so I was really grateful that you had this in the book to say, write it down. Whatever you're thinking of doing, write it down and declare it. It's the power of words that once we declare something, the word becomes life in our lives as well. So that was, to me, the first thing. I wrote it down, and then I started to write the to-do list, register the business, set up a website, write the business plan, and then I just keep checking it off. I come back, check off, have I done this? Have I done that?
Wow.
So it's really a clear application, of what I feel like God shared with you that I took in from reading the book and just started to live out,
That life. What a beautiful story. I mean, it drives at one of the effects that I was hoping it will have on people. Because at times you get an idea, you don't write it down, you become distracted, the noise around you, that you may lose years before that idea comes back to you. But like you stated, because you had the space and the direction, the strategy, and you wrote that down. So Professor Ajayi-Soyinka, would you have anything that you were able to do?
Like I said earlier, I'm learning a lot from my co-panelist. That's a very inspiring story. And it sets me thinking,
Hmm.
you know. Like I said, I'm retired now, and my retirement came alongside my coming out of my comfort zone. I said I was undergoing some trauma. There was a lot of noise, like you said, around me. I have many interests. I had many interests, and I still have many interests. I was enjoying my work, but when I came out of my comfort zone, I realized that I needed to move on.
Hmm.
And that's why I started the process of retirement. I mentioned that I saw my financial planner.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important because when you retire, what are you going to live on?
Yes.
And this has led me into so many other things. That decision, it's like I keep slowly tuning in down the noise of life around me.
Hmm.
I'm limiting these areas of interest, what I want to do. I'm focusing on my writing,
Hmm.
creative writing, which I love. So I've been writing short stories.
Hmm.
Another stage that I went through is after retirement. Okay, I need to downsize. Yeah. Yeah, you laughed. Yeah, I needed to downsize.
Hmm.
I had a big house, and I was just filling it with all sorts. And I turned around and I said, what do I need all this stuff for? I'm just filling empty space. And those stuff started the noise all over again. I
Wow.
did not see what I was doing. I knew I wanted to write. I was not finding the time to write.
Hmm.
And then last year, I downsized. It was hectic. It took a lot out of me. But when I downsized and moved to a smaller place, it's functional. And I found peace. And I said,
Wow. Wow.
it was such a relief. It was such a big freedom. Now, so I'm able to focus on my writing, my creative writing. I'm in a community that I enjoy, that is helpful. It's a very sharing, very generous community. So I think, that's what I have to share. I can't talk.
I know, and I continue to listen and just appreciate that in life, people are going through so many things. But at the end of the day, the strategies in order for you to get to that next level, that it looks like you have to retool, you have to retrain, and the way you now respond makes a big difference. And just to mention one also of mine, because when I retired, my background is in healthcare, and I worked in the area of public health, and I was more of health education. So I enjoyed being in the community. And at first, I just thought, okay, if I retire, I went back to the book and I said, okay, which of these strategies mentioned is actually going to help me to be able to continue the area of my interest, because I like to talk to people, I like to help people. And as a result, I realized that because then I moved into the nest of the financial industry. and I joined a great company. They are called People Helping People, PhD. It was actually started by Patrick Bet-David, and who is also the founder of Valuetainment. So I had to get licensed. And at first, I didn't want to do it. I just wanted to be in an aspect of the industry that, PHP has set up. Then all of a sudden, I realized that, wait a minute, I've read somewhere that we don't even use the full capacity of our brain. So why don't you again challenge yourself? And I needed to retrain. I needed to take state licensing exams. I needed to, start retraining myself. But at the end of the day, what was very interesting is that I still find myself that, knowing my purpose to touch lives, I can still see the thread. Because when I worked in the fully in the healthcare area, public health area, my focus was for people to have a healthy lifestyle, a healthy lifestyle. So always in the community, teaching about that, and that was cool. Then, I again, contracted with Maryland MVA, so that I was again teaching people, providing the education so that people can remember that it is good to drive safely. Because in doing that, you are reducing the disability because of accidents, and thereby you are able to reduce healthcare costs that you could have gotten into. So when I now found the financial industry, and I realized that for this particular company, PHP, they emphasize the fact that lack of financial literacy is really grave in some of the communities in the country. And like Professor Ajayi said, she realized that retirement planning was major, and she had to get all the people and all the tools that she needed in order to be able to have a solid retirement plan. So going forward, I'm realizing that even also for my own story, is that because I just love to teach, I love to train, and all my focus is always, let me help this person prevent this. Let me see how, if I provide the education and they are in the right place to receive that education, that truly they will do something about it. So I found myself that prevention runs through the theme of all the activities that I've gotten myself into. So but we're almost at the end, and I really appreciate you ladies. But one thing that I would also like, as you have shared your perspectives, as you have shared your stories, with us, which I'm sure somebody is going to listen to this and said, you know what, I think I need to look into, researching where this book is. And of course, we know we are on Kindle and Amazon and all of that. So my final question is, what final thoughts would you like to share about the book? You've said so many, but which one continues to stand, that if you have to talk to somebody that is going through, that is confused and full of anxiety, that I don't know what this next thing is going to, what would you say, Professor Ajayi-Soyinka?
I would say, read this book.
Wow.
It is a must-read book.
Awesome.
It's a good motivational book. It's filled with wisdom, everyday wisdom that we kind of ignore, that we overlook. And it is good for all ages.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Toun.
Okay. I would, and I know I've told you this in person, but I really still think it's something that is good for me to say even on this platform, is that, it's certainly the case that a lot of times we're used as vessels to reach people for something they need to hear. And I really believe that that was what happened in your writing this. You've been used as a vessel to send an encouragement to many. And, speaking as a young person, I have lots of mentors, and, it's always needed, that encouragement, that motivation, and I think that, seeing it in writing as well, even if I can't talk to you or anybody else every day, if I just want to like read something to boost myself, to encourage me, it's turned out that, there are lots of words of wisdom in the book that have been encouraging. And I even say, if it's just a page a day of something I read and say, okay, start the day, start the day with this word of encouragement, so I certainly feel like it's been a motivating and encouraging tool. And certainly something that I mentioned was, we read a lot of motivational books, and you can read it passively, but I think one of the things I like is that the structure of how the book is, where you've made it it's almost like a textbook where you are following along and you're taking notes, you're doing assignments. And so it's a proactive way of actually applying what you're reading, And I know you mentioned that it was part of a workshop. So it feels like that, like you're taking a course or a workshop or training. So I certainly encourage, especially young people. I think we're still trying to find our ways, figure out where we're supposed to be in life or what we're supposed to do. And you can't ever get enough in terms of knowledge. So, this book is certainly one of the things that I have found to be quite helpful, and in just helping to collate my thoughts, to write it down, to think it through, to see other words of advice that the book offers in terms of how to stay on track. You do a lot of going into, surrounding oneself with people who share the same mindset and things to do on a daily basis, that, even when you leave the nest, you need to keep going. You need to keep motivating yourself. So that's another thing that I find really helpful. So I really do encourage anyone who can, do read it, as Professor Ajayi-Soyinka said, that read it. It has a lot, and it's something that I'm sure that one would read and then share with somebody else, because that's what I've found that to be the case for me. And it's so short, it's so small. Sometimes it's daunting when you're reading books that are so big and thick. You're like, oh, I'm never going to get through that. But it's short enough that, in a week one can finish it and have grown from it, have really gained a lot from it. So thank you for writing this. I really, really appreciate this.
Thank you. It's a very easy read, and it's good for all ages.
Thank you so much, ladies, because especially what Toun just said is actually the feedback. I wrote it, and for me, that was it. But I've had situations of, feedbacks that people, one particularly elderly man who is also an American pastor, saw the book with his son. And the man said, like you both said, this is an interesting title. And he took it and read it and ordered, because he mentors also younger pastors. He now ordered for people. So Toun, I really want to say thank you for especially focusing on that point, that, that is part of what you get so much out of it, that you want other people to also, do something with their lives. Well, we're wrapping up, and I really want to thank our guests, Professor Folabo Ajayi-Soyinka and Ms. Toun Olumide, for sharing your takeaways, for sharing your stories, because that is really what we're hoping to do with the hashtag Leave the Nest to Soar. People sharing their stories and letting people know that, yes, we need to reassess, to sit back and just see what is going on. So I really want to thank both of you. It has been a great 1 hour. It's gone so fast. I can't believe that, we've been able to do so much. So to our viewers, we want to say thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you that later you will see this video and click on it. So we are saying that we want people to join the conversation. Send your story to info@Seeds Omega Consulting. That is, my business, and we'll be able to contact you if you also indicate that you would love to be on this platform, that you do have really a story to encourage somebody else, a story, or even where you are, that others may be able to see that in actuality, I can always do something. And don't, like you emphasized with the pandemic, don't let us come out, because now we've all been forced into the pandemic nest. if we can look at it that way, that to the extent that try to do something, retrain, retool, so that you are responding appropriately to those situations that we're now finding ourselves. So please share your story. Send an email to info@seedsomegaconsulting.com to be a guest also and be featured. And don't forget to use the hashtag Leave the Nest to Soar. Like I mentioned earlier, to those who have sent in, use the hashtag. We want to say thank you. That was very encouraging. And the stories that you shared really makes me to start to think that, yes, there are so many nests, like getting your children ready to go into college, helping your children to move into their own apartments, so that really you are able to see that they're okay. You get that peace of mind that they are okay. So thank you so much for joining us today. And we look forward to bringing other guests to you to this platform. We hope you've enjoyed our session. We know it's probably dinner time, but thank you for also just listening in. So until next time, I want to again say thank you, Professor Ajayi-Soyinka and Toun Olumide. Thank you for joining us. God bless.